Okay, good evening, everybody. This is John Burr, the chair of the Armory Park Historic Zone Advisory Board, and I'm calling the meeting for Tuesday, May 21st, 2024, at 6:54 p.m. due to technical difficulties, but we do have a quorum of 4 people, and we have several of our presenters, so we didn't want to waste the opportunity. Item 1, call to order, roll call. I'm here. Lynn?
Present.
Maurice? Maurice?
Here.
Great. Pat, say aye.
Yep, here on the phone.
Great. All right, we have a quorum. All right, item number 2, approval of minutes from April 16th. Our last meeting, they were available and were on the links. Has everybody had a chance to read them? And if they're okay, is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thanks, Maurice. All right,
Yeah, I'll second the motion.
terrific. I say aye. Lynn?
Aye.
Maurice?
Aye.
In the vote, are you okay?
Uh,
Great. Pat?
Aye.
Great, thank
Aye.
you. Motion passes 4-0. Call to the audience. I assume nothing came in. Okay. Just for reference sake, Michael Taku is out on emergency family leave and Dan Bursuk is here with the city. We have Michael Bescher, who's presenting on one of the items, and we have Elliot Welch with the city of Tucson. So we're going to move on directly to item 4, reviews. This is a we don't have the second applicant. So this item review 4B, PP pre 0524000121 South Fifth Avenue. Options for proposed plaza and shade structure. The board reviewed another pre when it was listed at a different address on 13th Street. We reviewed this in January, and we gave a fair amount of information to the group, and then it went to PRS, who also provided input, and I guess the applicants are back to get feedback on a shade structure. So do I turn it over to you, Michael?
Sure.
Okay. With us tonight is Michael Bescher with
Swaim Associates.
Swaim Associates.
Yeah, so yeah, my name is Michael Becker. I'm an architect with Swaim Associates. I'm hoping Matt from Arc Studios will be joining us. He was on the other meeting that's going on tonight as well. So
At Westview.
yeah, so hopefully he'll be joining us. I share my screen. We can talk about. And for those on the phone, I'll try to describe what we're doing as best I can. Let's see, where is Zoom? There it is.
So they're seeking further feedback on the potential shade structure, but I don't think we're reviewing the rest of the program tonight, are we?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I just want to say there's something on the screen that says Dan Bursuk, City of Tucson, PDSD, is connecting to your audio and cannot hear you yet. There's a banner in the middle of the screen that says that.
I have absolutely no idea unless Dan's power is going.
No, power should be fine.
I don't see that. So I think as long as we can hear you guys and you can hear us, it should be fine.
That's it. It's gone. It just went away.
Okay.
Okay, let me see if I can switch between them. Okay, that is going to work. Okay. Let's see. I can just do a quick overview when this comes up. There's the image of the park. So as I mentioned, we are on the team with Arc Studios. We've been hired by the City of Tucson Parks Department to do the updates to the Armory Park based on the bond. So this is bond funding from a couple of years ago that we're using. The image you're seeing now, I think you've seen before. This is Arc Studios' drawing of the existing park with some documentation. He included some images as well, just of the existing conditions.
You'll need to speak up. The microphones aren't real good.
Okay. This is the proposed improvements to the park. Again, hopefully Matt will join us and we'll come back to this so he can give you more detail and answer questions about what's happening in the rest of the park.
Okay.
What Swaim Associates is specifically tasked with is some kind of a shade structure in the center of the park, in addition to renovating the restrooms at the north end of the recreation center to make those public restrooms again and make them function again. So we'll show you kind of what we're thinking on that as well. But fundamentally, from what I understand from ARC Studios, from Eric Barrett and from Matt, is, the most of the park, they're keeping everything they can in terms of plantings that are in good shape, the cypress trees. They're, reinforcing the diagonal and sort of center approach to the park that it is today. We're going to be restoring the central plaza back to more of a circular center to the park, which is what it always historically was. And then we are going to focus a new shade structure that could also be an event space in the center of the park as well, which is where it used to be as well. So, right now the band shell is kind of off to the side. It's a little weird. That will be removed and we will build a new structure. So what I want to discuss tonight, we are really early in the design process as far as what Swaim's work is, as far as design. I have 3 or 4 different just sketches of options. So these are, right now I'm sort of like low effort on my part to get feedback so we can move forward with this in a really kind of positive way. That's our intent.
I will clarify, this is the same plan we already were
Yes.
presented in January, so nothing has changed about that. We're just looking at what appears on the screen is item, I believe, 13.
Yeah, 13, 14 there in the
13,
center.
14, and up,
And
item 1 around the bathrooms in the northeast corner
Yep.
of the property.
I think the only major change to the park outside of that I know you're aware of is the dog park. So I know that was an interest from the community. I know the neighborhood has concerns about that, so it's not,
I
not in
assume
my purview, but
if it's not in your purview,
Yeah.
then we've already commented, and so is plans review.
Okay.
So that's a separate issue.
got it. These I think were sent to you previously. There's some just
Yes.
precedent examples of other shade structures that are around. So let me switch to my other presentation here. It's not doing what I wanted to do. Stop sharing for a second. There it goes. And let me close that. Okay. A little bit of a delay. That's why I'm kind of waiting. There we go.
I'll just try to help describe the images. There's an image page of the original Armory, the aerial view of the Armory, the current band shell, the west face of the current Armory Center, an historic photograph from 1910 of Washington Park showing the circle. And the lower center is a photograph of the original band shell as it was attached to the Armory and as built in 1911.
Thank you.
Sure.
Great. And this is just to show the historic context. It's just interesting to see the use of the park before the current senior center was there. It very much, still, the previous version very much still honored that center cross-axis orientation of it that the new senior center is unfortunately is no longer an option for us. But, the band shell built into the Armory, is an interesting thing. We took some dimensions off of this photograph on the bottom. We think it was probably about 20 feet tall, we're guessing, somewhere in the, 15 to 20 feet range. So this was not
The shell
the shell itself, the
Okay, 'cause
actual.
the peak looks like it's taller.
Yes, the peak would have been taller.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did that off of these doors, just guessing those are probably 7 to 8 feet.
Yeah.
So we just did some calculations. So it gives you an idea of the scale of this thing that it used to be in the park. This image on the right, we have an image of a tent. And this is shot from what we understand, this was shot in Armory Park when it was used as a military installation. So there were, basically camping happening in the park and with these sort of tent-like structures. So again, when we start talking about what do we do in the center of this park, what does that structure really want to be? I think, you look at other precedent examples, and what sort of contemporary spaces can be. There we go. And, when you look at sort of contemporary architecture, there's like a lot going on. In one corner of this, I'm showing the Bean, which is in downtown Chicago. If you're familiar with that structure, it's more of a object that draws people's attention, draws people into the park in Chicago, versus some other structures. There's one underneath it of another pavilion that's a little more sort of almost ethereal, right? It starts to disappear. There's a picture in the center is another idea that we've been talking about, is maybe there's a way the material of this could be a little bit reflective so that the thing could almost disappear visually at times. And then when it's active through lighting and other things, it could then reappear and it'll be very clear there's some sort of action happening in the park. But whether there's color or, geometry, obviously there's a lot of different ways to design something like this. And, we're looking at a lot of different options for that as well. This is just a variety of things that are kind of happening in the world right now. This next image is going to be of the park itself. This is just a very simple graphic drawing. We are showing the current design for that center space of the park. And then the yellow area, I'm using yellow just to make it highlight and pop out because these are conceptual drawings. So, it's not going to be yellow. I just want to say that. But I wanted a color that would stand out very easily in doing this presentation. So this first pavilion that we're talking about would be in the center of the space. We're calling it, I like to name things as I'm designing them. It just gives them an identity. So I've been calling this the Blur Pavilion. And this was the idea that maybe there's a material on this that could be slightly reflective. And this pavilion could really sort of appear and disappear at times. So you can see the general size of it. It's roughly 40 feet square, where that yellow portion of it is shown here. And that would be the covered area of the actual pavilion itself. The image you're seeing in the top, is an elevation of the existing senior center with this new pavilion sitting in front. It would have some transparency down the center, so you would still understand that center access to the door of the senior center, which is not used, but could be in the future more often. And then also following the landscape plans, we are showing some ramps and stairs that come out of that west door. There is an egress problem out of that door. It's currently not accessible, so we do need to address that. The way we're choosing to do that in this design is with a kind of, a flush landing at the door with a couple of steps down into this sort of pavilion, and then some ramps off to each side with planters that then would box those ramps in and help clean all that up.
That's essentially like the plan that was presented
Yes. Yeah.
by Arc Studios in January,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And we've not changed that. We're basically assuming.
You're just redefining it as a potentially square pavilion set back closer to the building to the northern quadrant of what would be a new circle in the park that was shown as a half circle in
Correct.
the previous plan.
Correct.
That help, Mike or Pat?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I just have each scheme will have a similar set of drawings. So this is sort of a perspective drawing of what that might look like. So what you're seeing here is a pavilion that would cantilever from columns that are on the back side, on the east side of it. So you would have this very clear opening on the front. It would have what I was talking about, these sort of screens that could hang down that would be potentially translucent and reflective. We want to block the sun and protect whether it's performers or people doing activities under this thing, but at the same time, give it some transparency. The depth of the structure is because we are doing a long cantilever. So we're looking at a lighter structure that is potentially has some complexity to it, is basically the idea behind this one. And again, the idea being that maybe whatever the screen material is around the top could be reflective. It would reflect the trees and the sky, and this thing would really have less of a visual presence than it probably has in this image here.
And it would be faced with a semi-translucent? sort of skin?
Yeah,
The
some,
shade?
some kind of, yeah, it may be like a metal mesh that would be, you know,
Okay.
you could see through it, but then you'd also get some reflections off of it, something like that. It wouldn't be a solid material, I'm not thinking. So it wouldn't be like a plastic, a white plastic or anything like that.
Okay.
So we're thinking of something that's more of a perforated metal or a metal fabric.
Okay, and for Pat, who's on the phone, it's basically an upside down isosceles triangle whose point is on a column, and it's got 4 of those devices cantilevered out over the center circle of the park.
I assume this is in the center of the park.
Yes,
It's in the center of the plaza that was on the plan that we saw in January,
Oh, okay.
a little bit back
Thank
towards the building.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's about 20 feet tall with a flat roof.
Oh, my.
we would slope the roof one direction, the other, so we have to get the water off of it.
Okay.
Um,
And if anybody else has joined the meeting, these images should be available tomorrow morning when the city posts.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
comments can come in at a later date.
And again, I want to emphasize, these are concepts, so, and I went to architecture school, so I have really thick skin. So please tell me what you honestly think. I don't want to walk away thinking one thing and, find out later you guys
It's a
had
little
other.
industrial, kind of complicated.
It is.
But whatever. Let's see, version 2.
Here's version 2. So they're all similar idea in that it is an object in the center of the park. This one is a bit more conventional in that it is essentially, it's a single cantilever again, because we wanted that open kind of mouth of the stage that would face east in the park or face west in the park, right? So you have to imagine, if you can see in the center of this drawing, there's some, sorry about the delay here, but we have a little performers there. There would be columns across the back edge here that then this structure would cantilever out. And then what you're seeing in this elevation, similar to the last one, although this one wouldn't have the screening around it like the last one did. So this would just be basically more similar to what you might see with a parking canopy for parking shade.
No.
So it would be the very simple steel L-shaped beams that could come out and then provide that shade as a very simple, clean structure. So
And that one's about 25 by 40.
yes, yep. It's a little, yeah, it's not quite as deep because of the cantilever, is
Okay.
it much further because we're relying on one set of columns where that last scheme actually had 2 sets of columns that we could cantilever off of.
Okay, for Pat on the phone, it's 4 levers with a cantilevered roof out and over that you could visibly see the underside of a sloped roof that looks a little bit like 1960s Circle K's in Tucson.
Okay, thank you.
It is, yeah, it's sort of the large glulam beam.
Yeah.
Expresses the structure a little bit. So, and then just putting a little bit of a curve potential on the front of that, again, to sort of have it respond to the center of the park and the geometry of the park, so.
You're showing it as a concave with a dip in the center. Is there any chance that an option of a
Convex,
convex with more of a dome like the original?
potentially, but actually what I'm showing here is this would be a flat surface and we're
Okay.
just putting a curve into the fascia. So it's not actually, yeah,
Oh.
just on the front it is just curved. So actually the surface of the roof would be flat
Okay.
because part of this is also budget. So we don't have a lot of budget to work with.
So it's flat. It just has
Yes.
an indented front fascia.
Yes, the front fascia is curved.
Okay.
But the roof itself is flat.
Okay.
So. But again, similar to the original band shell, it would open to the west. All of these open to the west because we think re-establishing that orientation makes a lot of sense.
And they're all centered, both
they're all
on the
centered.
building
Yep.
and on the plaza.
Absolutely. And they all will allow some access through into the actual senior center as well. So we're trying to make this something people could sit at during the day and have lunch and could also be the center of an activity, whether it's a musical performance or some kind of a gathering.
This
Speaking
one
engagement.
shows planters between the 2 bays on either side of the central entrance.
Correct.
Are those in front of the planters behind them?
Yes, I'm not
With
showing
the-
the planters behind them in this sketch.
Okay.
It's not that detailed.
Okay.
But I was thinking they would be additional planters. And then potentially these plants then could also grow up the actual structure and help to kind of, again, kind of soften it over time. I have another sketch of this one, just,
Huh?
oh, sorry.
The little hand drawings up top. We're showing. That one.
This is the similar idea, slight change in this where I gave it a little bit of a backspan of a cantilever, where this could create almost a covered walkway behind the canopy, and then have the primary cantilever, again, still facing west to cover some kind of a performance space. And then whether we want to, expand that lawn in the center, I think how we actually compose the center of the park, we need to think about, what kinds of activities are going to be happening here and what kind of services we want.
And that's technically called a butterfly roof.
Yes, that would be a butterfly roof. correct.
Okay, so it's like the previous iteration, just with a butterfly up flap over the walk area behind.
And
the
and no
pavilion.
planters.
Yeah, the planters aren't shown in this one. They could be there.
They could be.
Yeah. Again, as I'm working between sketches, I have ideas on one, they could apply to all. So this is all very, I want to reemphasize, this is all very fluid right now. So,
Okay, so are we.
and then the last thought we had was what we're calling the tent pavilion. Again, looking back at, just that kind of history of the site. This one, we've rotated the overall pavilion and then tilted it on the diagonal is what you're seeing here. So it's still rough. This one's about 40 feet square. It would actually have 3 columns with it would still have a cantilever to the west. So we want to keep that west side open as the kind of mouth of the stage. It would be able to extend quite a bit further, as you can see, into that central space of the park, providing more shade potentially.
Basically to the center point of the circular.
Yep. Absolutely,
radius. Okay,
yeah.
so it's a stop sign shape.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
it-
it is.
Yield sign.
It's a diamond, yeah.
The diamond. Same footprint as the first image, except rotated 90 degrees.
Correct. And this is probably more dramatic. It hasn't shown up yet. Yeah, as a hand-drawn sketch, this is a bit more dramatic than it might actually be, but you can get the idea that this would basically be, a pitched roof on the diagonal, that would then tilt up to the west so that we could get the stage to open to the west, but then also get the shade from, as much as we can from the west. I think we're fighting a couple of things here, this space wants to orient west, but that's probably the worst orientation. It's like orienting a soccer field east-west, but it makes sense from how the park functions and how it's historically functioned. So we're trying to see if there's a way we can extend enough of a cantilever or enough of a canopy out to shade it until the sun at least gets down into the tree line. Because, with the additional plantings and we're filling in the gaps of the existing trees, we should get a much more substantial tree line along 6th as well. So that's what we're trying to balance. And we'll do, as we develop the design, we'll do more modeling so we can really tune some of these angles to make sure it's going to do what we want it to do, which is to ultimately provide a comfortable space in the center of the park for these activities. So, and as you can see, this is more, there's 3 columns in this scheme. So it's the, kind of 3-legged stool with the cantilever off to the west. Again, same orientation. It's closer to the building, but over that sort of central space. You'll also notice, if you're, my sketch here doesn't always match the plan exactly, because again, we're sort of working through thoughts. We had one other set of thinking we were starting to go down. These are much rougher sketches, but there's been a lot of questions about more tensile structures and fabric structures. So we started looking at some options for that. We're very concerned about doing anything with fabric, just because it does not hold up well in Arizona. And the larger concern of the long-term maintenance of that, the city, frankly, parks just does not have the resources it really needs.
No.
So I would be afraid if we used fabric on this in 5 years, nobody's going to be happy with it. So we're all of these shade structures, we're trying to find, real materials, whether it's metal or, some kind of membrane roofing, but it'll need to be something that's substantial enough. And we feel it needs to be fully opaque, whatever the roof is. We want to provide full shade and protection from the rain as well. There's a lot of obviously shade structures in town that are more lattice-like or, something like that. That's not what we're leaning towards, but we're certainly open to any thoughts or suggestions on that.
Right.
So
Is
That,
there a name on this particular one?
this one does not have a name. We didn't
Okay.
quite get the name in that one.
So tent was the rotated diamond. and
Yes.
What were the other two names? Just,
I called the cantilever one, I called the Reach Pavilion because it's sort of reaching out towards Sixth. And then the first one was the Blur, because I like this idea, you know, investing in this idea of like having this thing kind of disappear to a certain degree.
okay, so they're all basically steel bases with some sort of inserted roof of any suggested material or just a lighter frame, I assume.
Yes, it'd be some kind of lighter frame system.
Okay.
And then, you know, again, we want it to be, you know, weather, you know, to keep the weather off of you, so it would be opaque. That would be the intent. So whether that's a metal roof, it could be, you know, it'll all be some kind of steel construction. It could have a membrane roof on it. Just depends on what's economical and what makes sense.
Question again here. The reason I said that it was a concave roof is
Mhm,
the elevation appears to show a concave roof,
mhm.
but that's not the case.
It's not the case.
So it's a flawed axiometric drawing.
It's a flat drawing of a curved surface, the surface that's been rotated. So you will actually see the curve in an orthogonal drawing.
So if
It's drawn
it had a
accurate.
half circle out, it would actually have from the street, it would have more of a convex
Yeah, we could,
sort of look.
we could increase the radius. We can make the radius larger. And
Or it could be projected even further out into
Yeah.
a semi half circle, which would give a dome-like appearance from the street. In elevation on an axis. Yeah.
maybe. I have a hard time seeing that one.
Well, if it's actually flat, but it curves in and from the street, it looks almost like a negative Japanese
Mhm.
concave form. If it was actually a projected out half arch,
So
it would
I understand.
actually,
So instead of
Yeah.
going
visually,
this way.
from the
it's
street,
going
it
this
would
way.
have
I understand.
a
Yeah,
dome-like shape from the street and would be a larger cantilevered area of a
Yes.
semicircle.
yes, I
Would that
understand.
be an
Yeah.
option?
Yes.
We're
Basically,
trying to get a reference.
basically, we would just reverse that curve. That
Yes.
curve would flip. Yes, you are correct. Yeah, it would look like that.
We're trying to get something that references
Mhm.
the original half arch.
Sure,
The current one that's there, nobody cares about. It's 1974 scrap metal.
right.
I think you know, an overall covering is fine. I'm glad it's centered on the plaza. I prefer probably the tent footprint
Okay.
personally, because it's more active and it relates to the axial design of the other things. But there are a whole bunch of other options here, and
Mhm.
I really should open it up to the board. So, Lynn, do you want to?
I, excuse me, I like the feel of the blur. I like the reflective material.
Okay.
And the bit of shade coming down
Mhm.
to help the eyes. Would need to look at it to make sure that you're not blinding drivers who are heading east
Sure,
on that block there.
absolutely.
My feeling is that they're all extremely modern,
Mhm.
which would not be my choice to go with the existing building. Whether, and I think the more fluid designs, I like the more fluid designs better than I like the very right angled designs.
What do you mean by fluid?
More curves, more
Okay,
that sort of thing. I like the curve on the building,
the arch.
the arch, thank you. And I think very good words today.
Okay.
Murray's?
Yeah, hi. Okay, so let me tell you what I like first. Okay, I like the fact that the pavilion is going to be oriented towards the west. I think that's a good idea. Okay, allow for more people to be able to, either sit under a tree or sit in the grass and be able to, look at the stage. So that's a good thing. That's what I like about it. Okay, now, John mentioned a little earlier that, it sure as hell looked like a 1960s gas station, and I concur, it does. So Lynn also mentioned that, it looks a little modern, a little too modern, and I concur with her as well. Okay. You showed us some pictures from a while back showing the original pavilion, okay, which was a regular uh, band shell, a round band shell, okay. And uh, and if you look at the seniors building, okay, there's a curve there. So, I immediately start thinking, why don't we replicate some form of the original band shell and put it in front of that arch, okay, which, of the senior center, it'll fit like a glove. I also think that, Armory Park is very nice, but right across the street, you have the Children's Museum, which is a classical building. And, for the heck of it, I cannot see putting a gas station across the street from a classical building. This is not it. Okay. It's a good thought. Okay. But are you familiar with the bench shell at Kennedy Park?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. I think this is kind of the way we should be going. We need to go with something a little more classical, something that's going to fit in the neighborhood. Okay, we cannot forget that, the senior center is a new building and its architecture is modern. So we have to find a way in between, a midway between the bench shell type at Kennedy Park and the arch and the senior center, something in between. But putting a totally modern structure, okay, is not called for, not for that particular area. Okay, I think it's going to take away from the site. This is a historic park. Let's not forget about it. Okay, we have to keep it. Some of the ancient feature. If they're no longer there, we have to bring them back. I agree with you. The current bench shell is, it was a quick job, a fill-in, which, by the way, somehow resembles the original bench shell. At least it has the shape of it. Okay, so even though they didn't go all the way till the end of their dreams, the architects then tried to do something that looked like previous. I think it was a good effort. Okay, so this is 40 years later, 50 years later, we can do better. Okay, and since we already have an arch that belongs to a building on that particular site, okay, let's take advantage of it. Okay, let's expand it. Let's make something really nice. And a bench shell is a bench shell. Again, it's not a gas station. I understand the will, to create shed and all that. Fine, if we need more shed, let's put more trees. Okay, we don't need a gas station structure to create the shed, not in a historic site. That's what I think.
Thanks, Maurice. Pat, I know it's a little bit to talk over the phone, but have we provided enough info for you to provide commentary?
I've got kind of a general idea of what you all are talking about. And again, I apologize to the group for having space to this, but I'm glad to be able to listen to the presentation. Is Armory Park, does it have a separate National Register nomination, or is it part of the district?
It is part of the district currently. It has been nominated. Steve Grady sent it in. It will be the first landscape listing both in Arizona and nationally.
Really?
For a district that is pending between SHPO and the National Register, who is reviewing that. So it is potentially going to be on the National Register as a Beaux-Arts park, yes. But it is
okay.
currently.
It would have its own register listing, but that's pending.
That is in the process. I the status.
in the process.
U.S. government
Well,
is unfathomably difficult to determine.
Oh, sure. Well, in light of that, I would think that whatever design is settled upon should be as little intrusion as possible into that overall landscape. Or, you know, and we wouldn't want to see anything done that would jeopardize that listing as you know, its own individual listing as a National Register element. I think whatever is the least disruptive and that respects not only its position as part of the Armory Park Historic District, but also that it is being considered for registry listing in and of itself. I hope that makes some kind of sense.
Mhm. Yeah,
Did
Yeah.
you say it was Ozark?
It's considered a Beaux-Art design park, yes, with a classical radio axis, an essential feature with buildings congregated on one side. It came out of the City Beautiful movement around the turn of the century that was actually inspired by World's Fairs. The
Mhm.
Well, if
Columbian
we-
exhibition,
we-
the
I
Columbian
was going to say,
exhibition in 1893 actually set the course for neoclassicism to be basically the guiding principle for public buildings and spaces for the next 35 years. And Washington Park / Armory Park is an extant remnant of that sort of thinking, as is the Children's Museum and its site.
so we are very lucky. We have a picture of the original bench shell, which appears on our screen right now, at the bottom of the screen. I think we should inspire ourselves from that particular picture, okay, and you know, do as close a facsimile to it as we can, okay. I think, and if we do it in connection with the arch behind it, you know, from the senior center, I think it's going to look really good. But you know, throwing away the history of that park, you know, by going totally modern, I don't think is the way to go.
I also think that the front face of the current Armory Center is basically pseudo postmodernism, and it's got a Neo-Palladian arched window, which was a reference to the band shell. So there is a semicircular format going as part of the language here. But I think obviously this new structure is going to be new. We have to recognize it is of the current time, and it has to be functional within the budget of the Prop 407 money for Armory Park, and they need to have enough money for the bathroom. So I think that's why they're talking about basically a steel structure that provides some sort of shade that they can do on the cheap and the slide, because that's really all they've got left. So we're trying to come up with overall ideas for Michael to come up with an idea here. So
yeah. And our intent, I mean, we do have to be efficient with our funding, but we do want to make something of quality that's going to make sense. Yeah.
It'd be great if it was
Yeah.
kind of a modern icon, so to speak, but I
Yes.
think a neoclassical reference to a semicircular form. I mean, it could even be kind of the neo modernism of 1960s, you know, I guess they were, what were they? Valley National Banks, like the one across from
Yeah, and they're almost,
Elkhorn.
they get a little more mannerish almost, yeah.
Some of that style was a really predominant style that has a language that might allow you to introduce some sort of curving elements to the format instead of just a block square sort of form. So I would encourage some reference to that, but keeping the classic footprint and that sort of thing.
Sure.
But any other?
Pat, one more time, if you all excuse me. Since the park is located in the historic district, and since it has a nomination pending, I think that whatever designs they're going through should be also reviewed by the SHPO's office.
I expect it probably will because it's a pending application. It'll also go to plans review and other things. We're still at the courtesy phase here, trying to get some feedback because Swaim has been brought in to design the pavilion as a
Okay.
architectural firm and construction design company, whereas Arc Studios came up with a general master plan working in concert with the Parks Department. So there's several different working parts here, and this is Michael's first introduction to dealing with us and getting feedback from an older
Sure.
plan somebody else did. So we're kind of that's why it's another pre with a different application number. But-
Right. Well, I think the sooner that the SHPO's office gets involved with the overall design concept, I think the better. Just to avoid any last minute, any surprises at the last moment.
Yeah, I mean, we will talk to SHPO. My experience has been they kick it to the local board. They'll kick it to the plans review subcommittee. They typically won't overrule that.
I think what's going on here is since there's some sort of restoration of what remains of the original forms of the park as part of the design that we talked about in January, this new structure is obviously a non-contributing portion of the park, but it has to be complementary to the overall design of the park that keeps the historic elements, but it would never be confused as an original historic structure.
Sure.
So we're back in the realm of the very non-defined term of compatible.
Compatible, yeah.
So we need to keep that in mind as we play back and forth with the various designers and hopefully get everybody in a live room where we can shake hands and chat about different things at a better attended meeting.
And we'd love to do that.
Yeah, but I do really appreciate that you came and were seeking feedback. Have you gotten what you were expecting?
Yeah, I think so. I appreciate everyone's comments. You've mentioned a few of the things I was already thinking. It's clear in the preservation standards, new structures should be clearly new. They need to be compatible and sympathetic, but whatever we do here needs to be very clearly, we can't rebuild the old band shell. That's not going to happen for several reasons.
Mainly money,
Footprint
and everything else, and use.
You don't want that.
I would also make the argument the existing building is not a very good building. So
Gee, really?
I appreciate, that it's been there a while, but it is.
We're just hoping it gets another 30 years of air conditioning. That's been going out for the last 8 years.
It's almost a very early postmodern building.
Yeah.
This building was, it's not mid-century for sure, but it was built in, I think, in the 60s. Is that right?
It was built in 1974.
Okay, so it was really at the beginning of that postmodern, and it is. I mean, just everything they've done, and
Philip Johnson would be horrified.
and it was not at all sympathetic to the park, right? I mean, you look at what the park used to be with the original Armory building, and
It's sympathetic in that it reused the Armory site and it didn't impose itself into 3/4 of the actual
true.
park.
They didn't put it in the middle of the park, so
It was
that's
centered
true.
on the original site. So
True.
but it was a very different understanding of historic preservation, but it was put in just before the historic preservation ordinance as well.
Sure.
So it was, it was supposed to be modern and now it's basically a defective building.
It's old.
I'm horrible with names. Guy from the city, do you want to comment?
All right, thank you, Chairman.
I'm
Sorry, I'm
sorry.
starting to introduce
I can't see your
myself here.
name on the screen, so.
Yeah, my name is Elliot Welch. I'm the project manager from Parks and Rec Department, Capital Planning Division for this project. And I'd just like to remind for context, as a Prop 407 project, what the bond initiative calls out for this. And it's a little over $1.5 million. So that includes the restrooms, which we mentioned briefly on the north side that we've determined will be the easiest to renovate. The new shade over the stage is an item that was called out. New benches and picnic tables, renovating the sidewalks and plaza area, and also area lighting throughout the park. So, given that budget, obviously there's a limited amount of things we can do. Appreciate a lot of your feedback from tonight, and Michael, you leading this conversation here. I think we have some direction to go in, and Michael, I don't know if you want to talk about the restrooms or if we even really need to do that at this point, but
Just a brief question on the restrooms. Are they going to basically be redone within the footprint of the current building? And will there be any exterior changes
Yes,
besides a door or two?
our current thinking is yes, they will be inside the footprint of the existing building. We're not expanding the building.
Okay,
We are looking at opening up some of the walls, so it's a much more open space so that it can be seen from the street more clearly, the way some of the other park structures.
well,
So
I don't know if bathrooms being seen from the street is necessarily an idea. Do you mean access to the bathroom?
no, meaning you can see the sink. So if you look at some of the parks that we have in some of the other
Whoa, whoa,
locations,
whoa, whoa, whoa. That should really come back for
it will.
pre-discussion as
We
well.
will. Because we're still working with the city to figure out what are the right options, but the issue with those restrooms is the privacy. That's what causes the problems. Is you get people in those rooms and they will block the doors and you have no idea what's happening in there, and it is dangerous.
Okay,
So we're trying to create a situation where those bathrooms are more open. You still have enough privacy in the stalls, but not too much privacy. This is
it does face the Manning house
right.
and
I understand that.
other residences, so I don't know if an open bathroom that,
Let's keep working on it.
Yeah.
Hold your judgment until we figure it
I'm
out.
not gonna say anything
Yeah.
because it's not being
You
presented
understand,
tonight.
but you understand our.
I do. We like
It
the oleanders, the current wall and some sort of screening. So if it were more visible from the park, which was policed, rather than from the area residents, that is a concept I hope we go
Okay.
in with.
No,
just
totally,
to
totally.
add some context for Michael here, obviously from the parks operations side, we want to make sure that we're able to identify if there are people within the restroom without having to enter them and find that. We want the restrooms to be available to everybody, parks are for everybody, but we don't want people living in the bathrooms, which we've seen in other areas.
No, we understand that. Maybe you could put up one of those devices like they have in New York where it's a portal to Dublin and then people can expose themselves on the internet
There you go.
without actually having to see them.
No,
I had missed
We'll
that.
bring that back for you guys next time. We'll put it right in the middle of the park. It'll be a nice
Yeah.
centered feature.
yeah, there you go.
We'll call it Portal 2.
I like the ones in Japan where
We're teasing
the
tonight,
glass
but
clouds out and then it's visible again.
Yeah.
We could do that.
We just,
Yeah.
we-
remember the
We're-
San Francisco was like $7 million. So
I know.
yeah, basically the
it's-
budget for the pavilion is what, about between $30,000 and $40,000 out of the budget.
no, it's more than that. I don't know specifically, but it's, if we have a $1.5 million budget,
Okay,
it's gotta be a couple $100,000.
Going to be significant.
okay. So there's
We're-
some
we're- we're-
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be something significant and it needs to be something that is low maintenance and permanent.
It'd be nice if it became an asset that everybody ended
Yes.
up loving.
Yes, absolutely.
So
And I think, it's, again,
that's what
I think-
dialogue's for.
yeah, exactly. The restrooms and this, I mean, it's a design challenge that makes me excited actually to really.
Okay.
There's all of these different things that we need to take into consideration as we design this. And the successful design is the one that sort of somehow finds a way to make all this stuff work together, including the budget. The restrooms are the same issue and it's a huge problem everywhere, right? There are, other than Ronstadt Center, there are no restrooms in downtown that are public. So it's, and
They are, if you know.
and even at, well, but they're not, I mean, they're not.
Yeah.
Owned by the city, right?
No.
So it is a growing issue that we need to find a way to deal with, because we want restrooms, for people to use, if they have their
Yes.
kids there, or they're at the dog park. But they need to be safe, made in a way where they're safe, and they won't encourage activity that's gonna be unsafe. It's the same issues the Children's Museum's been having, and the reason they wanted that other fence, it's, a lot of that was about safety. So it's, until we can deal with homelessness, I think we're gonna have some issues around this. So,
And we're not talking about the Children's Museum site at all.
no, we are not.
Good to know.
Are we talking about the dog parks or
No,
what's?
no, that's a separate thing. We've already given feedback and we'll see if they bring it forward or come up with new fencing or get rid of it all altogether based upon feedback or whatever, but that's not one of the issues tonight. We're just looking at
Sure.
concepts for shade structure, and basically an outline of what may be happening with the bathroom, and I think we've accomplished that.
Yes, and all of your feedback has been fantastic. I really appreciate it.
Great. All right, well, thank you for coming. Appreciate it, Michael. And
I really like your ideas about the semi-translucent and reflecting the trees and plants and sky, that sort of thing from the first one.
we're all kind of on the same page. We
Yeah.
just haven't drawn it or gotten a budget.
Right. Yeah,
Mhm.
and we have to
And
start. That's why
Yeah.
it's just, we need to draw something and get feedback and then we do something. It's design.
You are welcome back for as many courtesy reviews until the neighborhood is on board. And when the final design comes, I'd like to have a general meeting with the whole neighborhood invited.
Okay.
So hopefully we'll see more.
I just wanted to add one thing, is that I am not against the material that Michael wants to use. Okay, it's just the shape of the buildings doesn't fit in. But if you could make, a non-expensive, okay, arch, out of those materials, I'm all for it. Okay, if we could keep it on the budget, it's just, it has to fit in. And like I said, it's there used to be an arch. Somehow we're going to recreate some kind of arch. I think this is the way to go. Shippo. I mean, as far as getting it passed for as a historic park, it will help. Okay, if we can recreate the original feeling, it doesn't have to look. It doesn't have to be built in stones. It doesn't have to be very expensive, but somehow it's got to give that feeling that band the same feeling that you have when you go in the park at Kennedy Park, that kind of stuff. It's a real band shell. It's got to be a band shell. It doesn't matter what you make the band shell out of. It's got to be some kind of band shell. And if it happens to look like the original one from years ago, so much the better.
Thank you again for making the point. Let's wrap up this item and let Michael and City head on.
Go home.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for coming. I hope you got it, and you'll relay everything to Jasmine.
I gotta go.
Is she overseeing it as well?
She's the administrator, but this is, I'm the project manager.
Okay. Thanks again for coming. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. All right. We'll come back to item 4A. I do not believe we have an applicant on board, so we'll have to reschedule the landscaping issue, and we cannot talk about it. But you may want to drive by and take a look. It's one of those things. I did find the historical information that the city does not have, but we do have, so I'll send that to the full board before it comes back for us. All right, moving on, design guidelines project update, item 5, no update, minor reviews. There was a minor review for replacement of 10 doors on the east side of the Temple of Music and Art that I did last Thursday with Michael. Basically, the original doors from 1927 have warped. They can no longer be repaired while functioning, and so the fire department wants to shut it down. So they have ordered replacements. They can't get them to be manufactured exactly the same. They can only have the bevels on the outside, not the inside, because the equipment is no longer available, but they are going to be temporary, and over a 2 to 3 year process, they will restore and put back in the original doors. So it was approved to go forward as presented. Call to the board. Anything with anybody? Maurice, anything?
No, nothing new, everything good.
Okay, great. Pat, anything?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much.
I
Lynn,
got nothing.
okay. Fairly quiet. We all know that our new rep for the neighborhood is Karen Ulick, who replaced Steve Kozacek. And there was apparently a neighborhood meeting with her at Nancy Bissell's house on Saturday, and it was Sunday, and it was well attended. But I really don't have anything terribly coming up. But we should make comment that Dan Bursick is with us, and you all remember him because he's been the helpful person on code and getting chickens allowed in neighborhoods and all sorts of things over the last number of years.
Chicken.
And just so you all know, put your face in front of the camera, Dan.
Yep.
Bingo.
Hey, everyone.
He has taken over Corin Manning's position as planning administrator, so he's Jody's boss now. So we welcome him. He's filling in, and he is much savvier at putting together the equipment. That's where we can all hear each other tonight. Okay, item 8, future agenda items. I assume Jody didn't brief you with anything.
Jody did not brief me,
Okay,
but I can follow. I'm happy to follow up with any of that.
there may be some new stuff, but keep your schedule open for a June meeting because there's probably some stuff in the pipeline that we don't know about yet. And that's about it for me. I'm gonna call the meeting to, is it all right? Anything else, or can we call the meeting closed? Great.
Yeah,
We're adjourning at 7:49 PM. Thank you all. The recording should be up in a couple of days, and I'll get the minutes out as soon as possible. Have a great night, and thanks for coming.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for calling, John.
Thanks, Pat. Glad you could make it.